Now, it is no secret to anyone in this room or on this council that for years, Iran has supported Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other groups that continue to carry out attacks on Israel. Iranian leaders have routinely threatened to wipe Israel off the map. In recent weeks, Iran's proxies have repeatedly attacked U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria, whose mission is to prevent ISIS from renewing its rampage. So, let me say this before this council, and let me say what we've consistently said to Iranian officials through other channels. The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security, swiftly and decisively. To all the members of this council, if you, like the United States, want to prevent this conflict from spreading, tell Iran, tell its proxies, in public, in private, through every means, do not open another front against Israel in this conflict. Do not attack Israel's partners. And we urge members to go a step further. Make clear that if Iran or its proxies widen this conflict and put more civilians at risk, you will hold them accountable. Act as if the security and stability of the entire region and beyond is on the line, because it is.
This is my video update from Prague, Czech Republic on this Tuesday, midday, October the 24th. Let's talk about some news. And the New York Times, they put out an article yesterday where they claim that, according to their sources, the U.S. Fears that an Israel ground invasion is lacking a clear pathway to achieving the goal of eradicating Hamas. U.S. fears Israel has no clear plan for a Gaza invasion. The Israeli Defense Forces do not yet have a clear military pathway to achieve Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's goal of eradicating Hamas, the New York Times said, adding that in conversations with Israeli officials since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, American officials said they have not yet seen an achievable plan or action. Can you completely eradicate Hamas with a ground invasion into Gaza? Is that the way that you eradicate Hamas? Doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't seem like that's how you go about eradicating Hamas, but I don't know. Has the United States, with the 20-year war on terror that they launched in 2003, the war on Al-Qaeda and Afghanistan, Iraq, and all of these conflicts and occupations and all of these things, has the United States eradicated Al-Qaeda? I don't think so. One can make the argument that in Syria, the United States actually funded and aided Al-Qaeda, aka moderate rebels, but that's an argument that one can make. So I don't know if you can eradicate these groups via military means alone, and I still haven't quite understood how a ground invasion into Gaza completely eradicates Hamas, but that's the goals that Netanyahu has put in place, and according to the New York Times, the U.S. officials, they don't seem to be too confident in this goal and a ground operation into Gaza achieving the eradication of Hamas. Doesn't seem like there's too much confidence in such a plan. It seems more like these are political goals rather than military goals, achievable military goals. But anyway, that is what the New York Times is reporting, and we can talk about the forgotten war, the forgotten conflict, which is the conflict in Ukraine, which is getting little to no media coverage. Actually, Jungle Joseph Borrell, during an EU foreign ministers meeting, he was speaking to reporters, and not one reporter asked the European Union's chief diplomat about the conflict in Ukraine. All the questions were about the war in Israel, and it was so bad that Borrell actually told the reporters to not forget about Ukraine. That is what he actually told reporters. None of them were asking about what's going on in conflict Ukraine, none of them. And Borrell had to actually tell them, please don't forget about Ukraine. He told reporters that Ukraine continues to fight and said Kiev would be on the agenda for the foreign minister's discussions. Quote, "Do not forget about Ukraine," added the diplomat. Borrell pleading with reporters to cover Project Ukraine. That's how worried the European Union is with regards to the media coverage in and around Ukraine. And Elensky, he is also worried about the lack of media coverage about Project Ukraine. Elensky is so worried that yesterday in his nightly TikTok, Instagram video address, Elensky ordered the Ukraine military to advance 500 meters every day. That is a direct order from the clown puppet leader of Ukraine. He said that Ukraine needs results every day. We need to resist the Russian assaults, kill the occupiers, and move forward. We must advance by at least a kilometer, at least 500 meters every day. We must keep moving forward in order to improve the Ukrainian positions and put pressure on the occupiers. Such progress is needed to strengthen Ukraine and motivate foreign allies to provide more military support, Zelensky said, adding that next week will bring more opportunities for Ukraine. Next week will bring more opportunities for Ukraine. An interesting statement from Zelensky. Perhaps he means that next week the Ukraine military, with the assistance and aid, coordination and surveillance of NATO, will launch some more ATACMS into the Russian Federation. Is that what Elensky means by next week bringing more opportunities? Who knows? But Elensky is very clear here in this statement. Gain territory, get money. That's the formula. Gain territory, get money from the collective West. So for Elensky, the order is 500 meters a day. 500 meters a day equals what? $500 million? I don't know. What's the equivalent? What's the going rate of 500 meters, Elensky? That's what he's concerned about. Gain territory, get the media to talk about the territorial gain, and then go to the Biden White House and to the European Union and ask for more money and more weapons. So this is Elensky in a panic. This is Elensky in panic mode. And he should be panicking because he can't even get 500 million from the European Union, specifically from the EU Peace Fund. That is what the European Union calls the military slush fund that gets dished out to the Elensky regime. They call it the EU Peace Fund. And the reason why he can't get his hands on this 500 million, he's been trying for a while now, The reason that this money can't get funneled to the Elensky regime is because of one, Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban in Hungary is standing in the way of Elensky getting $500 million. And Orban, his government, refuses to sign off on the distribution of this $500 million because Ukraine will not permanently remove OTP Bank from their terror list. Now, they've removed OTP Bank from their terror list temporarily. They've suspended it temporarily from that list so that they can unlock the $500 million. But the Orban government is saying, we don't want any temporary suspension. We want permanent removal of OTP Bank from this Ukraine terror or war list. It's some list that the Elensky regime has put together of companies which they believe are aiding Russia in the war against Ukraine, and OTP Bank is on that list. We have not yet managed to solve the problem of the 8th tranche of the European Peace Fund. We are still looking for a solution to this issue, but one way or another we will find it. That is what Jungle Joseph Borrell said. The European Peace Fund, that's the fund that is used by the European Union to finance the war in Ukraine. It's actually called the European Peace Fund. And Borrell is basically saying during this EU foreign ministers meeting that they haven't found a way to get Hungary to sign off on the distribution of this $500 million from this fund to the Elensky regime. Ukraine's National Agency of Corruption Prevention provisionally removed OTP Bank and 5 Greek shipping companies from the list in the hope that this would lead to Hungary's unblocking of 500 million euros of vital EU military aid for the Ukrainian people, and will also eliminate the possibility of Greece blocking the future EU sanctions package against Russia. While Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó called this decision a step in the right direction, Budapest seeks guarantees that the bank will not later return to the blacklist. The move to temporarily suspend the inclusion of OTP Bank and the shipping companies was made following negotiations between the agency, national governments, and representatives of the companies, according to the agency. Yeah, Hungary is saying we want permanent removal of OTP Bank from this war list, and then we will sign off on the $500 million from the EU's peace fund into the war coffers of the Ukraine regime. Interesting choice of words from the European Union, the EU peace fund. And Viktor Orban, he was giving a speech yesterday in Hungary, marking the country's failed 1956 uprising against the USSR. And in this speech, Orban accused the European Union of seeking Soviet-like dominance and trying to strip Budapest of its identity. And here is what Orban said, and I quote, "Today, things pop up that remind us of the Soviet times," Orban said in a speech on Monday in the western Hungarian city of Veszprém. "Yes, it happens that history repeats itself. Fortunately, what once was tragedy is now a comedy at best. Fortunately, Brussels is not Moscow. Moscow was a tragedy. Brussels is just bad contemporary parody." Basically, Orban is saying that the USSR was the real deal when it comes to an authoritarian regime, but the European Union, well, they would like to be the real deal like the USSR, but they're just a bunch of incompetents They can't even do authoritarianism right, according to Orban. It's just a bad parody. The Guardian did not like Orban's speech, and they ran with the title "Orban calls Brussels a bad parody" as he pokes fun over EU's rule of law measures against Hungary during speech. Hungarian Prime Minister calls Hungary safest and most stable country in all of Europe in a speech on anniversary of the 1956 revolution. So that is what the Guardian said in reference to this speech by Orban. Oh boy. The Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Shmyhal, he has acknowledged that Ukraine has a huge ammunition problem. He's basically saying that this ammunition problem exists throughout the entire world. And the only way for Ukraine to solve this ammo problem is for Ukraine to produce this ammunition at home in Ukraine. Because all over the world, they have run out and are depleted of ammunition. All warehouses are empty, and the political upheaval in the US is a big concern. So how exactly does Ukraine build ammunition factories to match the ammunition factories of Russia? How exactly does that work? Is it that easy to build ammunition factories, Mr. Prime Minister Shmyhal? Today, we don't have ammunition factories that can match the Russian Federation, but tomorrow, on my orders, because the entire world is depleted of ammo, on my orders, we are now going to start producing ammunition. Boom, just like that. Is that how all of this works? 500 meters a day. That's the order from Elensky. 500 meters every day. And the order from the Ukraine Prime Minister is we need to start producing ammunition. Millions and millions of rounds of ammunition starting now. An interesting statement from the Ukraine Prime Minister. And finally, we have this article from the Washington Post with the title, Ukrainian spies with deep ties to CIA wage shadow war against Russia. And in this article from the Washington Post, they basically talk about how the CIA from 2014, the CIA essentially took over the training and the operations of Ukraine's intel services, the SBU, and the military intel service, the GUR, and how the CIA started to train these intel operatives from a location outside Kiev. They started to provide these intel agencies with equipment, with surveillance, with training, techniques, tactics, everything. They just started to pretty much redo Ukraine's entire intel services from the ground up. Actually, the noise pollution in Prague. Cool car. Actually, the Washington Post even says that the GUR, the military intelligence service of Ukraine, was the CIA's, like, I think they used the word baby, like their baby project, and they built it from scratch. Essentially, they did away with the Soviet tactics and they implemented Western CIA tactics and techniques, and they recreated Ukraine's intel services, and they recreated these intel services with a focus of combating Russia. And this started in 2014 after the Maidan coup. And over the years, the article paints the picture of Ukraine intel services kind of going rogue in a way. And it started with various assassinations of Donbass officials in the years between the Maidan coup up to the special military operation. For example, the assassination of Givy. I don't know if you guys remember Givy, but that's one example that they cite as Ukraine intel services kind of going off script from what the CIA trained and taught them to do, and actually conducting assassinations in Donbass. And then the article talks about how the Ukraine military services just kind of went Frankenstein monster in a way. And over the last year and a half, they have been targeting and assassinating anybody that according to this article, that is a traitor to Ukraine, including politicians, journalists, ex-military officials, people living inside the Russian Federation. And in this article, they cite the case of Daria Dugina. By the way, the article makes it a point to say that the CIA does not and did not condone these types of assassinations, and this is the Ukraine intel services just going off script and deciding that they're going to use the CIA's training to conduct assassinations of Russian citizens, even Russian citizens living inside of the Russian Federation. And the instance of Daria Dugina, they detail it in this Washington Post article, how the SBU actually assassinated Daria Dugina. And they claim in this article that Ukraine intel services, what they did is that they smuggled bomb components inside of a cat cage, a pet cage, and they created a secret compartment, and that's where they put the components of the bomb. And then they brought those components into the Russian Federation, into Moscow, and the bomb was actually meant for Daria's father, Alexander Dugin. And the SBU, it was their belief, their understanding, that in the car, Alexander Dugin as well as his daughter were going to be in that car, and that's where they had placed the bomb. And once again, this article makes it a point to say that the CIA is not condoning these types of actions, that various CIA officials actually condemned, questioned these types of actions. But the article says that while the CIA questions these types of assassinations and doesn't condone these assassinations, the CIA will still not pull their support for the SBU and for the GUR. So it's an interesting article from the Washington Post. It's long, it's detailed, it talks about the CIA's connection, control of Ukraine intel services, and then it paints a picture of the Ukraine intel services becoming a kind of Frankenstein monster that is now going after just about anybody that is critical of Project Ukraine. And that's how they justify these killings of civilians, journalists, politicians, etc. Anyway, I'll put a link to this article, an archived link to this article down below in the description box so you can read it. And, it's a long read, but it's an interesting read. A very large CIA presence in Kiev. That is what this article says. A very, very large CIA presence is in Kiev. And I've heard that the CIA has a whole lot of people just hanging around in Kiev. And, as I read this article, I just thought there's so many there's such a Western presence in Ukraine. It's so deeply entrenched now since Maidan and probably predating Maidan. There's such a U.S. presence, spies and spooks and CIA agents, and now you have all of these Ukrainian agents as well who have been trained by the CIA, and some of them have been trained properly. A lot of them are going off script, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of people. I think the article said that just the GUR alone has something like 5,000 agents in its organization, and the SPU is much bigger than that. It just led me to believe that Russia's not going to have any choice other than to dismantle all of Ukraine. It's going to have to dismantle these organizations and this architecture that the CIA has put into place. And we're just talking about the CIA here. We're not talking about NGOs and think tanks and other collective West organizations that are deeply entrenched in Ukraine. It's going to be impossible, at least in my opinion, from reading this article, it's going to be impossible for Russia to live, to coexist next to a Ukraine which has been trained by the collective West to go after Russia. So that was just my conclusion after reading this article. I mean, these organizations are deeply entrenched in Ukraine. Russia's not going to have a choice other than to deal with the country as a whole, to dismantle all of these organizations throughout the entirety of Ukraine. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to have instances like what happened, tragedies like what happened to Daria Dugina, occurring indefinitely in Russia, unless Russia deals with all of Ukraine, whatever that may be. Anyway, that's it for the news. I could do a clown world now, and this clown world has to do with Italy and Giorgia Meloni. It looks like that her partnership with the father of her daughter, it was not a marriage, it was a partnership. This partnership has come to an end because Giorgia Meloni's partner is on video propositioning co-workers to a threesome or a foursome, actually. Wow. And when Giorgia Meloni got wind of this, when this became public, Giorgia Meloni broke off the relationship with her partner. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has revealed that she has separated from her longtime partner, television personality Andrea Giambruno, after footage emerged of him appearing to proposition a female co-host to a threesome or a foursome. Quote, "My relationship with Andrea Giambruno, which lasted almost 10 years, ends here," Meloni, 46, wrote in a social media post on Friday, just days after footage of Giambruno's actions on the set of the well-known show Striscia la Notizia went viral. "I thank him for the splendid years we spent together, for the difficulties we went through, and for giving me the most important thing in my life, which is our daughter, Ginevra," Meloni continued. Her comments follow the emergence of the video, which was filmed during a commercial break and uploaded to the program's social media channels and websites. It allegedly showed Giambruno propositioning the female co-host for group sex while he appeared to grab his genitals when making the suggestive comments. All right. I don't really have any comments about this story, but yeah, it is indeed a clown world that we live in. Giorgia Meloni, the conservative, the conservative prime minister of Italy and her partner. Her partner asking for a threesome or a foursome or whatever. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, and Twitter X, as well as Rockfin, and go to the Duran shop. Use the code the Duran20 and get 20% off of all merchandise